Hey, how are y'all doing? I'm super excited to go into the history of the Timurid Empire. We're about to talk about an incredible story today about how a cattle thief went on to rule one of the largest empires in history and killed 5% of the world population. We're in for quite a treat.
What an intro. My goodness.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed right off the bat.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Civilizations in Review. I'm Ben and Megan. Together, we're in the same pod. Don't worry, everyone. But very excited to chat with one of our writers, Nico Ziovic, all about this very exciting intro. My goodness. But right before we jump into it, though, Megan will read the 101 introduction. But I want to talk about all of the great social media platforms that we're on and where this will be going.
Yes. So if you guys haven't seen in previous weeks, we've talked about this a bunch, and we are just reminding Nico of all of the platforms before. We're not going to do a quick quiz because I don't think I could even pass that. But we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Spotify, Pinterest, Pinterest and YouTube, and soon to be on TikTok. We're working on it. Ben and I very firmly are millennials, so we're not 100% sure how it all works, but we're hoping that a very nice, kind Gen Zer will come along and explain TikTok to us. So before all of that, or after all of that, we are so excited to jump into the
Thank you,
civilization.
Nico.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nico, for coming and talking to us a little bit about this. We are so glad you chose this civilization. It seems very unique. And from what we were talking about before we hopped on this call, it is very similar to a Mongols 2.0, which is the closest thing that we can get to explaining it in, 5 words? So, Ben, if you want to jump through the intro for us,
will do.
Please take it away.
So everyone, if you go to alphusaic.net, Civilizations 101, and then click on Timurid, that's where we're at tonight. But I will read the intro. The Timurid Empire left a lasting cultural impact in the Islamic world. Culturally, the Timurid Empire belonged to two worlds, the Turco-Mongolic world of its rulers and the Islamic world. At its height, the empire was Central Asia's predominant power, whose borders encompassed much of modern-day Afghanistan, parts of India, Pakistan, Iran, and Turkey. The Timurid dynasty left a number of successful military campaigns. However, they are led a number of successful military campaigns. However, they are best remembered for spearheading an impressive revival of artistic and intellectual life in the region, the Timurid Renaissance. The best example of this revival are the discoveries at the Ulugh Beg Observatory. Wow, regardless of your intro, your sentence, Nico, my goodness. Let's jump into your sentence though, because what a beginning. Cattle herder murdering a bunch of people. Tell us more.
Yeah, sure. So I guess we'll start off by, just talking about the founder of the empire because he is quite a personality. A lot of people call him Tamerlane or Timur, but the word Tamerlane comes from a really interesting origin. It actually is derived from the word lame, derives from the word the lame. So this great conqueror was known as Timur the Lame. So this guy was born in kind of, the remnants of, it's called the Chagatai Khanate. So, the Mongol Empire kind of splits off in a similar way that the Timur Empire would. And he's born in this area of modern day Uzbekistan called Traxonia. And it's really far flung. There aren't many prospects for him. So as a kid, he starts to steal people's cattle. This really smart cattle herder notices that he's escaping with some of his property, grabs a bow and arrow, and shoots him twice, once in the arm, once in the leg. This ends up, impacting the way he walked the rest of his life and leaves him, quote unquote, lame. So he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. So this great conqueror was known as Timur the Lame. And I don't know if he needed to overcompensate for, how, for his limp or whatever, but he said, you know what? I'm going to be better than Genghis Khan. I'm going to rule the world. No one's going to call me the lame ever again. They're going to call me Timur the Great. Well, they called him Timur the Lame anyways, but he also got other nicknames too, so it's all right.
I'm kind of speechless. What a beginning to this empire.
I'm also quite speechless. I feel like every single week we go through these empires and civilizations, and we talk about this like very dramatic kind of entrance, exit, and like whether or not they're nice to their neighbors, whether or not they're, you know, mean to their neighbors, how cooperative they are, like from a survival standpoint. This is wild.
Wild.
A wild story. Also, the guy only had like 7 followers when it all started off.
Well, I mean, that's how I'm starting to feel on social media right now, you know, like all I want to be is the lame and like known for something and
Oh my
only 7
goodness.
followers.
So he started as an injured cattle stealer from this cattle herder. Cool. How did he get to murdering all of these people? I mean, I'm still shocked by this intro
It's
sentence.
the
you have.
rags to riches story, Ben.
I mean, that's one word for it.
Absolutely, rags to riches. And killing like, I don't know anyone who's like done anything like that. Killing 5% of the world pop, like crazy. The guy was like absolutely. I mean, he left a trail of destruction in his wake and was just left he just changed Central Asia for such a long time. And thinking of his origins is just crazy because he really, only started off with around, according to some sources, really his history is really murky because when he came to power, he wanted to kind of make himself seem greater than he was. He came to rule over a Khanate, but he is not a descendant of Genghis Khan. He lied and said he was. So the history, there are just tons of different sources in terms of what his history was like. So there are some people who claim, he was a cattle herder, others that claim he was a great nobility. Definitely most of it points to him having been a cattle thief who ended up leveraging, he became a raider and he was able to leverage power and kind of manipulate enough tribal leaders and enough people in the region to then assume proxy control over the Chagatai Khanate. And he ended up directing the Khan and kind of, picking who he wanted to be the Khan of that region. And with his proxy Khan, then he directed other invasions. So really he played a lot of powerful figures against each other and was a master of the game of politics. And really from there, he gained power. But he would use the term emir at first instead of Khan. But then when he got to such a big enough, to such a big platform, he was able to change his own history. But it was really, crazy progression.
Totally blown away right now.
That is such like a started from the bottom, How long did the Timurid civilization last?
Around 200 years.
Okay. So was it he kind of came to power and then he gave it to what, like 2-3 sons for
he died of the common, so he wanted his legacy, he wanted to have a larger territorial hold than Genghis Khan did, and he wasn't really focused on how succession would work out, so he actually died of the common cold. And he was like, he woke up one day, I'm gonna invade all of China, why not? And so he went on with his armies over there and went against the Golden Horde and against a ton of different factions, and he ended up dying of the cold, and his armies didn't really know what to do. And so the empire ended up being divided between his sons and one of his grandsons, and a civil war broke out almost immediately. And then one of his sons, Shahrukh, I don't know if he was a son or a grandson, took power and went in a completely different direction than Timur the Lame. But there was no succession plan, and that's honestly like so many other empires, right? This conqueror isn't focused on succession, and so he ends up losing all of his holdings because he doesn't really have a clear, this is how power should be transferred.
Yeah,
like that.
I think it's so interesting when people forget that like power has to be transferred. You kind of remember that those are the people you don't necessarily want leading, not because they plan poorly, but also because they're just like kind of out there for their own power. They're like, this is me, this is my dynasty, this is my empire, and then they just forget. I mean, the civilization we talked about last week ran out because they overtaxed their people.
Right.
And so, I mean, not to cast any judgment or blame or anything on the individuals that we're talking about, but I think that a lot of civilizations now, modern day, we can kind of look back and be like, oh, that makes sense. Like, don't do that. You know, like make sure that you have a successor. That's a big one for sure.
Absolutely.
So I totally thought Timur was a Genghis Khan descendant. I didn't know a lot about this empire.
Well, it's because he lied so
I mean,
convincingly
good for
about
him.
it.
Good for him.
Yeah.
600 years later, we still believe that. Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, it makes sense that he was a military leader. He clearly had the conquest strategy, but to also manipulate the like tribal leaders and the political elite, you know, until his passing, and then the succession plans went all up.
I mean, he
flames.
didn't do it all himself, did he? Did he have like a entourage that he kind
A
of
council?
an entourage that he relied on to help him out?
So it definitely was not all him, but what he was very effective at. I think the guy Timur was supposedly, again, we can only know so much in terms of the history, but he was supposedly literate. But what he did, he spoke a few dialects of Turkish. He spoke Mongol. He spoke maybe like 4 or 5 languages, and so he was able to effectively kind of play people off of each other and make enough allies, and then play those allies off of each other, where he created power vacuums. The region was kind of in anarchy, and so he was just really good at diplomacy, and he was a Machiavellian, and so he kind of created an entourage, and then he became a leader as a result.
I mean, there you have it, folks. Wow. Do it.
No, I think we need to like just end it there, because I don't think my brain can handle it. This guy's my role model.
Other than the murdering, right? Hopefully.
No, for sure. I don't condone murdering. Facebook, please keep me up.
Incredible. Let's switch gears a little bit. I'm looking at the rest of your document. I mean, so fascinating. So the turquoise tiles and the architecture, that was a huge deal for the Timurid dynasty, right?
Yeah, definitely. If the Timurid dynasty, when they weren't focused on murder and conquest, they had a really big impact over art in the Islamic world. So a lot of architecture we see, especially in the Eastern Islamic world, is directly influenced by innovations we saw in the art world that happened during the dynasty. Specifically under Timur's son, there was this movement called like the Timur Renaissance, and pretty much because of a series of deportations and conquests and wars that happened under Timur and the Trail of Destruction, conveniently a lot of Persian artists and literary figures and intellectuals happened to be in this one city, Samarkand, who Shah Rukh made the capital. And all of these really enlightened figures working together, living in close proximity, contributed and worked together to create this artistic revival that contributed to a lot of art, and even from everything to do with like how textiles are made, to how architecture works, to types of calligraphy that we still see in Uzbekistan. All of that really emerged because of the fact that a lot of really important figures in Persian literature, in really even people who popularized Turkish, were congregating in the same city, largely as refugees.
I love that. That's so sweet.
Wow. This story gets more and more layered. I'm fascinated by this like renaissance of intellectual and cultural life, and the main image for Timurid is the Ulubeg Observatory, like the most novel space exploration thing in the entire Islamic.
What an appropriate comment for today.
And the Mars rover just landed, Perseverance, I think was its name. So a cool tie in there. But wow, I mean, the fact that there is this cattle thief combo, murdery, political, diplomatic, crazy man, and then also this renaissance of art and architecture and tile work and history and astrology or astronomy. The non-zodiac one, astronomy. Maybe they had. I mean, they conquered China, right? Anyways, I'm going way off topic.
100%.
Apologies. Wow, that's very, very, very fascinating. Is a lot of that architecture still visible today throughout Central Asia and Iran?
Yes. So Soviet Union falls, and a lot of leaders in Uzbekistan are trying to find the national identity, that's independent of the USSR. And so they want to revive, this national symbol. And so they designate Timur a great national figure. And so you'll see like Uzbeki documents, celebrating him, and a lot of state-sponsored buildings, and so the capital, throughout the capital of Uzbekistan, they purposely emulate Timurid architecture, or at least an idealized version of it. So a lot of the national imagery of Uzbekistan based around this empire, even though the Uzbeks were a separate empire that invaded and helped destroy the Timurids. But they claimed it because, post-Soviet Uzbekistan needed a history. So
you just dropped that as if that, my goodness, this empire gets more and more fascinating.
No, I think what Nico, what's so wonderful is that all of the other civilizations that we've talked to, they've got their drama. They've got their drama, like the Nabateans, they have their structures. This one takes the cake, I think. Just in terms of being like shrug it off, no big deal, but I'm just going to take over the world, and then they do. And that's kind of wild to me. I mean, they do for 200 years, sure. And obviously they had their issues, but I mean, to be able to be called the Scourge of Asia, that's like a big deal.
Or to be able to he designated himself like leader of the he literally took down the Ottoman Empire for a while at one point, and kidnapped the Sultan and just brought him over. Like Timur did that. He was like, "Yeah, I'm a mirror of the Ottoman Empire now. No big deal."
Wow, how old was he?
He continued, being a badass conqueror into his 70s.
Man.
So a 7-year-old in the 1400s conquering and scourging the entirety of the continent of Asia as a Mongol 2.0, as we may call it.
It makes you really question your own resume, I think.
Oh my goodness.
It makes all of us kind of question our life choices. Are we far enough in life? Is COVID stalling everybody's
Can I be called a scourge?
Can I? Well, I mean, I title myself the scourge of the house, but that's me and my dog, and that's it. My goodness, the amount of just kind of power and influence I think that would have to have just kind of boggles the mind. How much bit. Well, I mean, obviously there's a fair amount of modern influence that you still see from the Timurids being around, but what kind of ideological modern influence would you say that they have?
That's a good question. There's a lot of influences kind of hidden. The Timurid dynasty arguably lasted for a very long time, but in somewhere you wouldn't expect, in India. So arguably, when the British finally took control over India, it was a member of the Timurid dynasty who was the last leader of that country. The Mughal Empire was founded by Babur, who was a direct descendant of Timur. And so when the Timurid Empire fell apart, Babur was like, I messed up. We lost. Let me go somewhere else, start a new empire. And so he founded the Mughal Empire, which lasted to the British invasion. So you can see the influence there in a lot of modern aspects. And yeah. But ideologically, I honestly, I don't know. I just because I didn't know the answer.
Well, I mean, I think what you've written about on El Fusaic with the artwork and the architecture and the literature, that is very significant, and that obviously contributes significantly to culture. Being able to say that you lasted for so long and you moved around to so many different areas, I think there's a lot of influence that would kind of seep in that people wouldn't necessarily think of right away, but even small amounts of architectural and literature influence is huge. So that is no small feat by any stretch of the imagination. My goodness.
And there really couldn't be another figure like him. He was the last, one of the last conquerors like that. And so that's why we don't really see a lot of repeats, specifically because of the invention of gunpowder.
Okay.
Huh.
which really empowered other militaries and even, the balance. So those types of conquests really, they didn't become obsolete, but over time they did. So we'll see, empires expand very quickly, but not by teamwork. You don't see a nomad invader like that again.
Interesting.
Um,
Now, I don't know if you guys play the game Civilization on Steam.
I love it. Yeah, we should
I
play
love it so much. And my friends and I, particularly during COVID, have been playing like, once a week, twice a week kind of thing.
Civ 5.
But we play Civ 6 and it's like a group thing, but like this is exactly what it reminds me of. You don't see nomad invaders after gunpowder. That just doesn't happen. People get mowed over, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we would say on the friendly scale, we're probably in the negatives, would be my guess. Last week, for those tuning in again, we started a friendly scale on a scale from 0 to 10, how friendly or jovial an empire was with its neighbors. And seemingly what the Timurid Empire has done is probably a 0, maybe, unless you have a more insightful answer, Nico.
There are 2. Not quite.
Okay.
There are 2. Timur's son wanted to kind of repair relationships. So they repaired relationships with China, which really did a number and allowed for a degree of trade. And they actually allied themselves with a lot of the Christian countries against the Ottomans and the Mamluks, because the Ottomans and the Timur Empire had beef.
Yeah, so enemy of my enemy kind of thing.
Yeah. And so they kind of weren't the best at making friends, but after Timur, they were too fragile really to kind of be as mean as they could have been, and then they were just kind of repelling foreign invasions. So how unfriendly Timur was kind of made them, this not likable empire, and so their neighbors were kind of like, we don't like these guys, let's get rid of them. So this just proves, treat others how you'd want to be treated. This is like the number one example of that empire wise. They were really mean, and then there were a bunch of people being meanies to them, and you reap what you sow. But there are 2.
Yeah, for the moral of the story, you reap what you sow is for sure the headline, I think.
Yeah.
The Scourge of Asia, you reap what you sow.
The Scourge of Asia.
Well, wow, this is
great headline.
Wow. So I mean, I keep saying at Mongol 2.0, it came at the decline of the Mongol Empire, though. That's correct, right?
This was when the Mongol Empire was a ton of different empires at this point. So there was a horde, and then a bunch of other khanates too.
Yeah.
At the same time, they were all kind of competing against each other.
So it's more like Mongol 50.0. Yeah. If we're being honest, it's like Mongol 1, Mongol 2, Mongol 4, and you just keep going. That makes a lot of sense.
Mongol 7, Genghis is back, right? That would be the title of the movie.
Just Fast and Furious is in Mongol form, I think.
But nomadic and no gunpowder, and then we'll.
But nomadic and no gunpowder, yeah.
Again, at Netflix, we had The Wedding that destroyed the Tulunid Empire. It must be the T empires that have all the drama.
I think it is the T empires.
So about 3 weeks ago, we did an Egyptian empire called the Tulunids that was a breakaway from the Ayyubid, I think, empire. Oh, please fact check us and watch that other one to see if I'm right. But anyways, these T empires that have broken away have Netflix credentials, I think. So Nico will give you producing credits for sure as our resident expert.
There we go.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm happy to produce.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Any final cool things you learned in your research and writing, or anything you left out? Because I know 800 words did not do this empire justice clearly.
Yeah, I guess it's a really good thing that, I guess don't mix, family with ruling an empire. It always ends in civil war. So that's the main, and a lot of the other Civ 101s we kind of see similar patterns. You can love your kid a lot, but don't give him, your title, because that'll probably get him killed.
So all of monarchical ruling is too messy, is what you're saying.
Well, if you have one kid, maybe, but if we're gonna have 7 kids, the assumption is just fight it out, y'all, kill each other,
Oh
Like,
my
which-
goodness.
So if I'm a monarch, only have one child is the second moral of this story.
Right, or like two.
I don't know if it's like if you're a monarch, but I think it's like if you're a monarch in like a very anarchist
Right.
international system, right? It's a little different than like Britain today.
Yeah, no, I was trying to make that leap, but okay, that makes more sense. Wow, fascinating.
But I don't know, like, would this strategy be right? Like, have a bunch of kids so you can pick the right one who can like handle it,
Yeah.
or just have the one so they get the like only child syndrome. I don't know.
Which maybe isn't a good thing.
Which maybe isn't a good thing. I say as an only child, you obviously are not an only child.
No. I'd fight my brother for control of the Timurid Empire.
Oh
I feel like.
boy. All right.
I mean, you've inspired. If Timurid is your hero, he's gotta be mine too.
I guess so, yeah. Well, a shout out to Jeremy Lutz. We are so sorry, but your brother has just declared war on you in the name of the Lutz Empire.
It'll be dominant and worldly. Anyways, thank you again, Nico, for writing this really important piece, showcasing the connection to Iran today and obviously most of Central Asia, but also this beyond fascinating empire. I don't think there's any more tea empires in our system, but if they are, we'll definitely start doing a Netflix special because my goodness, they are so full of drama. Thank you again for writing, being a wonderful content writer. Nico has such great future articles coming, so please make sure to check us out on alfuzaic.net. But thank you all for being here, tuning in to this fascinating cattle thief turned diplomatic strategist extraordinaire in a 200-year Islamic conquest of Central Asia. My goodness, what a title.
This is
As
definitely,
one-
yeah, no, 100%. This is definitely our favorite time of the week. So we hope that it is
100%.
your guys' favorite time of the week as well, where we get to, sit down, chill out, have a glass of wine, and kind of freak out about all these civilizations that had insane drama in history. So on that note, if you guys love what we're doing, and if you hate what we're doing, email us at alfusaic@gmail.com because we want to hear all of your complaints, your critiques, your questions, or any praise you want to give us. Anything significantly from or for, I think, poor little Jeremy Lutz would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I'm recruiting my entourage, as we say. So
recruiting your
come join.
entourage. Jeremy, you might want to start recruiting for your own entourage as well. But all inspired by the Timurid. So you can't blame the Lutz family. You can only blame the Timurid Empire.
Their legacy lasts on today. My goodness. I'll edit your modern influence section, Nico. Anyways, thank you so much for being here, for all of you tuning in. Any last words, Nico, as we end this call?
Thank you guys for having me out, and please make sure to check out Alfuzaic.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. And again, make sure to join this side of the Lutz Empire clan. Have a good night, y'all.